Think about the last time someone raised their voice at you. Maybe it was your manager in a meeting. Maybe it was your partner in an argument that started over nothing. Maybe it was just someone who got frustrated and their tone shifted. Just slightly, just louder than normal. And before you could stop it, your eyes filled up, your throat went tight, your face got hot. You could feel it coming and you could not do a single thing about it. And the worst part was not the tears. The worst part was the shame that came immediately after. The voice in your head that said, "Why are you like this?" There are a lot of names for what you just described. Crybaby, too emotional, so dramatic, can't handle conflict. The narrative is always the same. You are someone who falls apart when things get difficult. I want to offer you a different explanation, one that is a lot more accurate and a lot more scientific. You do not have a weakness. You have a threat-sensitive nervous system. And today we are going to look at exactly what that means, why it works the way it does, and why it has nothing to do with how strong you are. The first concept you need to understand is the amygdala hijack. Psychologist Daniel Goleman named this in 1995 after studying decades of neuroscience research on emotional response. Here is what actually happens in your brain when someone raises their voice at you. The tonal register of a raised voice, the volume, the sharpness, reaches your amygdala before it reaches the part of your brain responsible for rational thought. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that would normally say this is just your manager being frustrated, it is not a physical threat, does not get the information first. The amygdala does. And the amygdala does not do nuance. It reads loud, aggressive vocal tone, and it fires the same signal it would fire if you were actually in danger. Your nervous system goes into emergency mode before your conscious mind has had a single thought about the situation. The tears, the throat tightening, the face going hot, that is not an emotional overreaction. That is your body flooding with cortisol and adrenaline. It is a physiological response to a threat signal. You are not falling apart. You are activating. Now, here is the second concept. Not everyone's amygdala fires at the same threshold. Some people have what researchers call a hyperactive threat detection response. This means the amygdala activates at lower levels of perceived threat than average. It is not random. Research on adverse childhood experiences, published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress, found that repeated exposure to unpredictable loud voices or conflict during early development physically lowers the activation threshold of the amygdala over time. Your brain learned, at some point, that a shift in someone's tone was a signal worth taking seriously. It recalibrated. And now, even in situations where you are objectively safe, the system fires early. It fires fast. And it is genuinely trying to protect you. The third concept explains what the crying actually is. Researcher Stephen Porges developed polyvagal theory in the 1990s. It maps the three states your autonomic nervous system moves through in response to threat. Fight or flight is the one most people know, but below fight or flight is a second state called dorsal vagal shutdown. When a threat feels unavoidable, when fleeing or fighting is not an option, the nervous system shifts into a freeze and immobilize response. Crying is one of the most common physiological signals of that shift. It is the body signaling, I am overwhelmed. I cannot process this through action. This is not you choosing to cry to manipulate the situation. This is not you being unable to handle conflict. This is a nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do when it detects a threat it cannot escape. Think about it like a smoke detector. A standard smoke detector is calibrated to go off when there is a certain density of smoke in the air. A small candle? It probably ignores it. An actual fire? It goes off immediately. Your nervous system is the second detector. It is calibrated to go off at the candle. That setting exists for a reason. A smoke detector that waits for a full fire before alerting you is a smoke detector that might not save your life. One that catches the signal early, keeps you safe, before the situation becomes unmanageable. The question has never been whether your alarm is broken. It is simply calibrated differently. And calibration can be worked with. If having a threat-sensitive nervous system was a pure liability, natural selection would have removed it thousands of years ago. It did not. It kept it in every generation. Because the group needed you. In any early human community, the majority of the group needed to be able to tolerate moderate stress without shutting down. They needed to hunt, to build, to fight when necessary, but a group made entirely of low-threat detectors had a blind spot. They did not catch the early signals, they did not hear the shift in tone that meant something was wrong before it became a crisis. You were the one who noticed when the atmosphere changed before anyone else did. You read emotional shifts in the group with precision. You registered when the dynamic in a room turned before it escalated. That is not a flaw. That is a specialized function. The environment you grew up in shaped your calibration. But the underlying system, the one that reads a room, detects danger early, responds before others even register a threat, that is not something that needs to be fixed. It needs to be understood. Understanding why this happens is not enough on its own. So here are 3 strategies that work with your nervous system's wiring instead of trying to override it by force. The first is called the 6-second rule. Goleman's research on the amygdala hijack identified that the cortisol and adrenaline dump triggered by perceived threat has a natural peak and begins to metabolize within approximately 6 seconds, not minutes. Seconds. The problem is that most people in a confrontational moment try to think their way out of the response immediately, which keeps the nervous system activated. The 6-second rule is simpler. You do not try to respond. You do not try to explain yourself. You say nothing, or you say, "Give me a moment," and you count. You are not being passive. You are waiting for the cortisol to drop below the threshold so your prefrontal cortex can come back online. 6 seconds is often enough. After that, you will be able to access your own thoughts again. The second is called the physiological sigh. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman at Stanford has documented this as the fastest known way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that counteracts the threat response. The mechanics are specific: 2 short inhales through the nose, followed by 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. The double inhale fully inflates the alveoli in the lungs. The long exhale activates the vagus nerve. This is not deep breathing in a general sense. It is a targeted mechanism. You can do this in the middle of a conversation. You can do it while the other person is talking. It looks like you are collecting your thoughts. What it is actually doing is signaling to your nervous system that you are not in physical danger. The third is called the pre-frame conversation. This one is not for the moment of conflict. It is for before it. Research on communication and emotional flooding, developed by psychologist John Gottman at the University of Washington, found that the most effective intervention for people with reactive nervous systems is not learning how to manage the response in the moment. It is reducing the unpredictability of the trigger before the moment arrives. In a relationship, with a manager, with anyone you have recurring conflict with, a single direct conversation changes the architecture. You tell them, "When someone raises their voice at me, my body goes into a stress response before I can think clearly. I am not walking out. I am not being dramatic. I need a minute to come back. That is how I work best." Gottman's research found that this kind of preemptive framing reduces the frequency and severity of flooding responses over time because it removes the shame layer. The shame is often what locks the nervous system in activation longer than the original trigger. When you understand your own calibration and name it to the people around you, the threat response has less material to work with. Now, some of you watched this and recognized yourself exactly in what was described, but some of you are thinking, "My problem is not just the tears. When someone raises their voice, I go completely silent. I disappear. I say nothing for hours afterward, and I do not know why." That is a related pattern, but a different one. It has its own name, its own mechanism, and its own set of strategies. That video is on screen right now. I will see you over there.